What happens between the spreadsheets stays between the spreadsheets? Well, this sounds a little dirtier and more kinky than this episode will be, because we're talking about spreadsheets and dirty data and how to clean your data with Susan Walsh.
All around us, data is constantly gaining more and more relevance in our private lives, our businesses, and our careers. For companies, it is turning from a competitive advantage into a survival factor. Those who do not use their data effectively will perish. It is high time to get a grip on the data chaos. Every other Tuesday on Unfuck Your Data, Christian Krug interviews data professionals about how you can bring order to the chaos, thus making the most of your data for your company, your customers, and, of course, for you.
So, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and all others out there. Now, please fasten your seatbelts and make sure to bring your seat and table tray to an upright position as we are in for a wild ride. The probably coolest data podcast from Germany is now brought to you in English. And this is Unfuck Your Data, and I'm your host, Christian Krug. And for our first ever show in English, I'm happy to welcome a phenomenal guest. And we're gonna get our hands dirty today because she has written a book about what happens between the spreadsheets. And I was incredibly happy when she said yes to joining our adventure here. But without further ado, here she is, the one and only Susan, the classification guru Walsh.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited. I love the title of the podcast so much, and I can't wait to tell everyone I've been on the podcast.
Thank you so much. So please, Susan, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Who are you and what's the data topic you're dealing with?
Yeah, well, I am known as the classification guru, fixer of dirty data. I have my own business, had it for 7 years. I have a team and we classify spend data, normalize suppliers and clean CRM systems, ERPs, vendor masters, anything, material masters, anything you can think of. We do basically unfuck your data. That is what we do.
Perfect. So you say you're dealing with dirty data.
Yeah.
What is dirty data? Because this is like in this show for the German audience, they know it. We have to define stuff to bring it closer, to make it more accessible for everyone. So when you are talking about dirty data, what actually is dirty data?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And not just that, people are working with different types of data. So dirty data to them will be different to someone else. So it's always really good to kind of clarify what that is. So in my world, that is things like misspelt or typos in names, descriptions. It could be missing information. Mm-hmm. It could be different units of measure. So, in Europe, we use one form of unit of measurement. The US tends to use something else. So you could end up with multiple versions of the same thing. One of my favorites is date formats. So even if you work in the same company and use day, month, year, which is quite a common format, how are you separating that? Is it a dash, a slash, a dot, or do you not have a separator? So that can create lots of different versions. It can cause problems when you're trying to find documents, for example, with a date, if you've not got the format the same. There's also things like information in the wrong columns. Now, I'm sure we've all seen that, particularly with address information. How often have you seen the full address in one cell, not separated, or you have the postal zip code in the town column and then the country in the zip code? It can be so messy. And ultimately, all those things lead to our good old friends, the duplicates. So, or near duplicates, as I like to call them, because sometimes they're not exact copies of the information. They're almost the same. So you might get a Robert Smith and a Rob Smith. and it could be the same person. So that's the kind of things that I am dealing with on a daily basis. And another good one is formatting of telephone numbers. I have been doing a lot of cleaning of telephone numbers recently. Sometimes you get the country code in front. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes there's spaces. Sometimes there's not. Brackets, dashes, seen it all.
Okay. So this means data is, we were talking about, so framing it for the audience, we're talking about business data here. Yes. Or also, because I think also when it comes to storing your private contacts, most of us have a cell phone and all that, and we're storing that in our way for ourselves, and that's fine.
Yeah.
If you make mistakes there, your problem. But we're dealing about company data. So
yeah.
In a ERP system, CRM system, Excel sheet, whoever still uses those. We all know that there are plenty of people out there having to deal with that.
Yeah.
But why is that a problem? I mean, like with the private contacts, if there's a Rob Schneider and a Robert Schneider, I mean, I don't care. I know who that person is. But at a company level, why is dirty data even a problem?
Wow.
So why?
Could you be sending 2 emails to the same person? That doesn't look good from a business perspective. What if they're actually, you think they're the same person, but they're not, and then you send something sensitive to the wrong person? The other thing is marketing. Actually, we've seen more mailings with people working from home now instead of in offices. Yeah. What if you're spending a lot of money posting out leaflets, letters to one person twice, or sending it to the wrong address or the wrong person? It's all wasted money and wasted time. And even things like in a CRM system, you pay for the number of contacts that you have. So if you've got a few that are actually the same record, you're paying like 3-4 times for the same thing. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so it's waste of time, waste of money. We need to get our data correct to do the proper. For example, you're talking about marketing, to do the proper mailing, to get the right contacts.
Or it could be finance data. You could be entering, information that has to be accurate. And if it's not, then you could be misreporting financial information, which could cause a whole load of problems.
And now you're cleaning this data, and you're cleaning a lot of data manually, but also I think I can imagine, and your name indicates that with classification, that there are some frameworks. So Susan, please enlighten me. How do you fix that? What are the best practices here, and what can our audience do if they find something dirty in their data, except for, of course, contacting you in the first place?
I try to share kind of what I do. We use a tool called Omniscope, which is an off-the-shelf software tool. I've developed a methodology on how to use that. But for most people, they just want to be able to fix something quickly. So I do a lot of examples of how you can clean your data in Excel. And you really, obviously with big data sets, it's more difficult, but you really don't need anything more than that. Like if you're careful with how you use Excel. Excel's not the problem, it's the user. There are tools out there, but ultimately you need to know your own data to know if it's right or wrong or what it should look like. So yes, you can run it through a tool, but you need to have the knowledge to be able to check that it's right at the other end when it comes out. So it's, being familiar and getting close to it is, what you have to find a way that works for you. Now, if you've got unlimited budget, go with the easiest option. But if you don't have unlimited budget, then you will have to use something like Excel. But it doesn't have to be a disaster.
Okay, Excel and not becoming a disaster. I mean, I think this is for me the topic of its own.
Because definitely is.
In my experience, Excel can become quite of a disaster quite quickly.
If you don't know what you're doing, absolutely.
Yeah. So this means classification is like really going through the data, and you still need a business understanding of if the data is correct or can be correct.
Yeah. So we see a lot of supplier names. So think of like a your own personal bank statement. When you've spent lots of money, you'll get a merchant and then a date. So it's like that on a grander scale. So you have a company name and then an invoice description of the goods or services that you've bought from that person. So we'll go through that list and we'll classify to a level that suits the data. So for example, if you are buying some stationery from Staples, it might just say office stationery on the invoice. And so you can't classify it in any more detail. But you might get a breakdown. You might have pens, pads, folders, binders. You can classify all that information. Same with IT, is it just hardware or peripherals? Or can you go into laptop, desktop, keyboard, mouse, all the details. So that's what we're doing. And the thing about the work that we do is a lot of it is very subjective or requires context. DHL is known as a global courier service. So the go-to default classification could be courier. However, there are a lot of manufacturers that are using DHL for, say, warehousing and storage and distribution. Or as third-party logistics. So it requires a different classification, and you need to know who you're working with and, the context of the data to be able to kind of classify that. So that's what we do. That's where, there are lots of areas of data where AI is really successful in speeding up the process. Things like machine parts, so nuts, bolts, and screws. If they've got a part number, you can probably easily classify that with AI. But anything that's a bit more requires a bit of thinking is better by humans.
So this means that data classification is not only what we had in the beginning. Like you said, okay, there's dirty data, there are duplicates, there are typos, there are misformatting. So this is one part of the classification, like to get the information and the data technically right.
Yeah. And so we have to, we don't change we never change the original data. We always create new columns. So the first thing that we would do is normalize the suppliers. So you might have PwC, P.W.C, PricewaterhouseCoopers GmbH, or you might have G.M.B.H. We see all the different versions. We would normalize that to PwC in a new column. Then from there, we can start to classify the information. Now, we don't change the invoice descriptions, but we need to, we can understand and recognize if something doesn't look right. Or for example, you might see a very vague description like services. Now, without knowing
quite
who
broad.
Is that cleaning? Is it IT? Is it legal? Is it consulting?
Without management workshop? Absolutely.
Without knowing the supplier, then you can't classify that. So it's you need the context of the data to be able to help with that.
But now I get it, that the technical normalization is the first step, and then the classification is really making sense of the data, which can be still a bit cryptic, and then thereby helping people to sort it to, okay, this goes to finance and this is PwC. This looks at the first place like finance, but somebody from HR, for example, booked a workshop on consulting there and they also used the same supplier.
In finance, you might have then 4 different accounts for PwC and an invoice comes in and it goes to account number 1, but it should have been in account number 3. Now, what might happen is either that invoice doesn't get paid or the invoice ends up in account 1 and account 3 and gets paid twice. So that can cause problems. So by rationalizing it, and also from a classification point of view, rationalizing and normalizing the suppliers means instead of having to individually classify 20 versions of PwC, we have to do it once. It makes more sense.
So you have then PwC, and then you have the subsidiaries and all the other stuff where the invoice may come from, and it's automatically classified.
There might be different. It could be tax or audit or consulting, but it's a lot easier to classify. It's more efficient.
Very nice. So, and you already mentioned the AI, and now the question, like, especially for the normalization part, I imagine that AI can help a lot there with trying to make sense of typos. Oh, you're shaking your head.
We have tried with AI. Not so great. I have a team between the three of us. We have 30 years experience of normalization. AI doesn't have a patch on us. And, you know, it will get to a point where it'll be so good, but we'll always have that edge. But what I have been doing over the last 2.5 years with my team is building a supplier normalization tool, which we are hoping to launch in a few months, called samification. So kind of like gamification, but samification. And it's basically making things the same. So taking all those PWCs and making them the same. And in a company, somebody could be spending hours, days, or even weeks with their supplier list, normalizing them. We're creating an on-demand self-service tool where you can drop your file in, and within a couple of minutes, you'll have a normalized file back. And
wow,
it's not AI, it's real people. It's a master list. It is some very smart code and rules based on our knowledge and experience. And it's I'm really excited about it. It's going to help people save a lot of time.
So now I have to ask a technical question.
Yeah.
Does this connect to CRM or ERP systems also?
No.
Not yet.
No, you just drop an Excel file in and it comes back. And, we do not want any more information than a supplier name. If you try to put a file in with a supplier name, an address, a phone number, it will be rejected. We want your supplier name and that's it. We don't want to be keeping any sensitive information at all.
Ah, nice. That sounds interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing it in action soon.
But yeah, who knows what the future holds? There could be APIs in the future.
So, but is that so AI is not supporting you in the normalization, but classification? Because in normalization, you say, okay, this is no.
We are a fully human team with some really great knowledge and some smart master lists and a bit of automation, but it is not AI. There are lots of companies out there doing AI. What has been lost is the knowledge and skill and experience. So that's where we come in and we can do the bits that tech can't do yet. That's a lot of what we do is that bit that tech can't touch.
Yeah, because I think this is also what I see a lot, that people are throwing AI at every problem right now. And I'll take this phrase to me. I said, back then in the systems, it was like shit in, shit out.
Yeah. It's even worse. It's a bigger scale now. Yeah.
With AI, it becomes shit in, bullshit out.
Yeah.
So to my experience, really the what you're doing with data classification and normalization is really the groundwork, the very foundation of working with data. And if you're getting this wrong and put not normalized, not classified, dirty data into an AI tool, it's just going to become worse.
Yeah. But it comes back to this understanding the data, knowing how to read the data, because I see it a lot. There are hugely skilled data scientists out there that can write the most amazing code, machine learning, work with LLMs, but they don't understand the output of the data. They don't know if it's right, if it's wrong, what it's supposed to look like. And I feel like that's a skill we're losing. So we need to kind of get that back. Because you can't blindly trust the AI.
No.
It's going to get you in a lot of trouble.
I mean, I hate humanizing AI, but also this is somehow where I say this is, at that point, you should a bit humanize AI. If some colleague turns up with some weird interpretation of data, you ask him, well, I want to go through that and I want to see how you came to that conclusion. And that should be the same with AI systems, like, you're right. Dear something AI, I see that you came up with a conclusion I'm my gut tells me no. Please tell me how you ended up with this.
I love that. That's a really great idea.
Because then I think but again, for that, you have to have a certain understanding of data. And this is also what you were pointing out rightfully, that to make sense of business data, you have to have two skills.
Yeah.
The business skills. So you have to know your business. You have to know if you're in sales, how your sales is working, or in finance, how your finance is running, who are your vendors, suppliers, your customers. And also you have to have the data understanding. And this is what you said. Problem is that in this usually really huge organizations, you have people who are experts in sales and people who are experts in data, but they rarely are
both
proficient in both.
Yeah. And actually, so coming back to the normalization example, if you use AI, it will learn from whatever's being cleaned, what it was and what it should be, and it'll look for patterns. What it doesn't understand is where that reasoning came from and knowing what to look for. So for example, I talked about GmbH. That comes after a lot of German companies.
Yeah.
But we've seen GmbH, G.M.B.H. Is it Gesellschaft, MBH? So there are so many different ways. And so while the AI would just look at the one example that's been done, I know after 10 years of doing this that there are so many different versions of the GmbH that we would add that into our coding and our rules, whereas AI would need to see it first to be able to fix that.
So that means we would have to throw a lot. And I think you told it you have seen a lot of data in your experience.
Yeah, and a great one is Poland, actually, SPZOO. I see so many different versions of that.
Oh, yes. And also then there are some signs above some of the letters, and some systems don't spell those properly. And with GmbH, you said also some companies are taking the G, which is for Gesellschaft, in the name of the company, and then put an MBH at the back of it. Like in German.
Oh, we see it all, or an abbreviation of it. Yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's called, sometimes I've seen Gesellschaft für, and then something, and then MBH.
Yeah.
So this means to really enable AI to have that knowledge, we would have to throw huge amounts of data and also huge amounts of corrected data to an AI. And this
and then at the other end of that, you need to look at it and go, that's right, that's right, that's wrong, that's right, that's right, that's right. Who's going to do that? Who's going to know that? And I think our kind of added advantage is we are all, do you know OCD, obsessive compulsive?
Oh, yeah.
So everything has to be like perfect. We need it to be perfect. We're not happy with almost perfect. If there's a dot out of place, we will fix it. And so I think AI is probably not quite as perfectionist as that. So that's the difference that we can make as well. And honestly, probably to most clients, they wouldn't even notice, but we notice. It makes a difference to us.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, you say this: if the point is not perfect, you might get skewed results when then using this data to do reportings and all that.
Yeah.
Like how much money did I spend on services from PwC? Because at the end of the day, now we have a lot of groundwork to do, but at the end of the day, the question of each and every CEO is, what's the advantage of having my data classified and clean?
Yeah, you could be negotiating a global rate with PwC for all the countries that you operate in. But I did also want to just say, we talked about perfect there, and actually there is no such thing as a perfect data set. And certainly I've had to learn to look like good. I don't like the term good enough. That's good for most people. I'm happy with almost perfect. That's my standard.
I mean, almost perfect and good enough for making the right decisions, I think.
Yeah. And different data sets will require different things. So sales and marketing, good enough is fine. Finance, it needs to be almost perfect, if not perfect. Those numbers need to be accurate, because legally you're in trouble otherwise.
Yeah, this is also, really, it depends. So the level of perfection you need depends depends a lot on the stakes which are involved there. I mean, sending out a wrong marketing email. Yeah, okay. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? That someone writes you an email and says, I didn't consent. Please delete my address, and else I'm going to sue you. But if it's wrong in sales, if it's wrong in finance, and you're billing on the wrong account or not paying enough taxes, someone might end up in jail. And most people I know are not too fond of ending up in jail.
No, definitely not. I imagine though, like German jails to be quite efficient and clean. Like probably not like UK jails at all.
So some people call it vacation here, even. Some people say that German prisons are vacations. I've never been to one, so I can't give you a first-hand experience.
Yeah, I don't think I want to test that theory out.
No, totally sure you don't want. So, but again, this means that, again, there is a lot of human input required when you say that different types of data need a different level of perfection. Because this is also, again, then bringing in the business knowledge and the data knowledge. So saying, marketing, it's about fine, works for me. And in finance, about fine isn't good enough. Yeah.
And also, I completely lost my train of thought there. So that's gone. So, yeah.
Sorry for derailing your thoughts.
Too much data in my head. So that's it.
So now, imagine going forward, we have done the normalization, then the classification, and then what are we going to do now with the clean and perfect and good data? So, Susan, you presenting me the perfect set, and what's next?
It's just come back to me what I was going to say.
Yeah.
But I will park that. I remember now. But so the whole thing about data is you can't just clean it and leave it. It's no good. You have to maintain it. That is the secret sauce. By maintaining it, it means that you will have less errors. So think about it like cleaning your house. If you clean it every week, it's less dust, less things to hoover, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. If you leave it for a month, it's going to be filthy and it's going to take way longer to clean. Mm-hmm. And data is just like that. But actually, what I was going to say before was the most important part is if we get people inputting data correctly at the first bit, then a lot of these problems wouldn't happen. So really, we need to target the people who are inputting the data. And the thing about that is most of those people are not necessarily data people. They are in finance, sales, marketing, call centers, they are not data people. And so they need to be trained and they need to be made aware of what's going on. But I have a nice little kind of, I've created the data coat, which is a methodology to keep that data nice and clean and maintained. So I say, make sure your coat's on. So first of all, it's got to be consistent. So make sure everybody's using the same language, the same terminology, units of measure, formats, all those, even the same process of how you input things. Make sure everyone's doing the same thing. Then it needs to be organized. So categorize that data. Think about, do you need to know sales by region, by business unit, by country? Have that information in your data so that you can pull it really quickly. And once it's consistent and organized, you then have to have accurate data. But again, depending on what kind of data is, agree what accurate is within your team.
Okay.
So finally, you've got your consistent, your organized, your accurate data. Good. Guess what? It becomes trustworthy. And how often do we hear, I don't trust my data? All the time. So
if every time I heard that sentence, I would have received €1, I wouldn't be sitting here. I would sit on my private island.
We wouldn't be here. We'd be doing this podcast from a beach somewhere in the Caribbean. Yeah.
Totally.
But also, it's not good enough to put your coat on. You need to keep the coat on all year round. So that's my little top tip.
Oh, that's really creating a picture. I love that. I really love creating a picture and then you have the code on and then
and
you said so many important things there. Like really you have to maintain it. It's not like that you start a data initiative in your organization and then suddenly all your data comes out perfect and you don't have to bother anymore and it will stay perfect for the rest of your life. You have to maintain it.
And it's something that everyone can remember easily. You know, it's got to be fun and playful, because most people who are inputting data don't care about data. It's boring. So by making it a little bit more fun, it's going to be more memorable and hopefully more relatable for them.
Yeah. And also, really, you have to start, as you said, at the source, at the very source of the people who are inputting data. And also sometimes, granted, those may be APIs and machines, but then it's even a bit easier to say, okay, I will decline that format, just send it back and say it requires format DDMM 4 times Y for the date.
You know, it could even be something as simple as, do you want uppercase or lowercase data or sentence case?
Yeah.
You know, even how many times I've seen addresses, some in capital letters, some not. All those little things, they make a difference.
Yeah. But if you have all this in mind and then you have trustworthy data and then you really can start working with those data and really base decisions upon those data and say, okay, this is my, for example, stay in this example, this is my global spending on PwC services. I can negotiate the rates differently. Or, wow, the company which I thought is my top number 1 customer actually isn't, because for a different customer, I've spread it for 5 accounts. And now if I sum them up, suddenly this is my priority number 1 customer, and I have to put in more effort and time and spend more time with this customer to make them happy, because they are my main source of income.
Yeah, you're so right there. It's, you know, once you have that clean data, you get really true insights and analytics, and data really is the window into the business. It really shows you what's going on.
Yeah.
But you have to have it clean and categorized and organized first to be able to see all that.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, this is the big goal, to make decisions not only by gut feeling. Sometimes I think, and this is really, you also pointed this out, really awesome, that even in the normalization part and classification part, there is some gut feeling which helps you speed up the process. But not only on gut feeling, but then again, put the data there, base the decision on data and see, okay, this is what it costs me. This is what happens. Go there, have fun with data.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Susan, thanks so much for joining. I'm looking at the recording clock and it's telling me to that we have to go to the wrap up.
Too much.
No, absolutely not. So, for the people tuning in from my German audience, they know this, but at the end of each episode, there's a small ritual which every guest has to go through. And there are just 2 small questions I would like you to answer, to ask you. And Susan, so what was the last song that was running on repeat in your head?
You know, I think I've been thinking about I do something called Lip Sync Sundays on LinkedIn.
I've seen those.
And I've been thinking about potential songs for new lip syncs, like particularly at events to get more people involved. And I think one of the songs that's been going around in my head quite a bit is Girls Just Want to Have Fun. So awesome. That's been doing the rounds quite a bit. I think that would make a really great lip sync for a lot of like women in data or business or procurement. So I think I'm going to say that, although there's a few of them in there. So it's like a constant jukebox.
Haven't heard that song in a while, but now it's also running in my head. Thanks. And the second question, or rather asking you, could you please recommend a book to us, to me and the audience, which we should absolutely read, with just 2 minor restrictions. One of them is not the book that you have written, because we heard the title. So a book that was written by a different person. And second, please, no adult literature. But apart from that,
I think maybe you got enough of that from between the spreadsheets, so we're all good there.
But apart from that, you're totally open to it. Might be fictional or whatever you like.
Well, you know, this is kind of ironic because I know I've written a book, but I do not read. I don't even read one book a year. Like, I'm really bad. But somebody sent me a book and I started reading it while I was on holiday just a few weeks ago, and it's called Buy Back Your Time. Ooh. And it's a really great book and resource for business owners who are completely overrun and have too much to do and are probably doing a lot of tasks that could be outsourced to someone who costs less to do it, so that you can then spend time growing your business. So I'd highly recommend that if you are, you know, got your own business or work in a company where, you know, even actually, if you're just work for a company, but you feel like you've got too much to do, maybe you could use this as a justification to get some help.
Wow, that's awesome. Sounds like I have to put it on my list of on my ever-growing pile of shame.
What's not necessarily the last book you've read, but what's your favorite book?
My favorite book? This is always, I have always two books which I really recommend.
Yeah.
So as this is the English version, I will recommend the one which was written in the United States. It's Humor Seriously by Naomi Bagdonas and Jennifer Aker.
Oh.
And it's about how humor can actually help you in business and how creating an atmosphere
every day.
Yes, and this is a book where I say they have scientific proof that humor is a real asset. And the fun thing is their course on humor at Stanford gives you the same credits as corporate accounting.
I love that.
Awesome book. Always recommend this.
Humor gets you so far.
Yeah.
But you have to be comfortable with it.
Yeah. And there are really some great points of advice in there on how you find your style of humor, how you can leverage it. And also, this was one of the most important chapters to me. What do you do when you fail with humor? Like, if you crack a joke in a corporate environment and it goes terribly bad, how do you deal with it?
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
Great.
That sounds great. I'm going to check that out. And what's the other one?
It's from a German author. He's Lars Behrendt. It has a short title, which is Get Real Innovation. And the long title is Get Real and Forget About Innovation If You Don't Really Mean It.
I love that. I'm so on board with that.
There's also an English version of it. He translated it. And it's
I love the fact, that you've gone for two books that I've never heard of. You haven't gone for Buy Back Your Time is quite a well-known book, and other ones like Atomic Habits and things like that. I love the fact that you've put a couple of new books on my radar.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for I didn't. Also, you say it's Buy Back Your Time is a classic. Atomic Habits, I know, but I didn't know the other one. So here we are with 3 books you out there should read.
Yeah.
And then, dear Susan, thanks again.
Thank you
for your time and the awesome conversation. And of course, thanks to our fellow listeners tuning in today. And this is the moment where I just would like to ask you to click subscribe or follow this podcast in the very player you're currently listening to it. And if you like the show. But also follow and subscribe if you don't like the show, because just to help me put up better numbers. Also, if you're not following me or Susan on LinkedIn already, this is the very moment to do so. You will find our profiles in the show notes. And also we're happy to take all your questions on dirty data. Just feel free to reach out to us. And that's it for today. I'm looking forward to seeing you around next time, and everybody have a great time until then.